The Galactic Joy Archive contains more human laughter recordings than any other species. Part 1. Archivist stood in the center of the Joy Archive's main chamber, staring at the holographic display with growing confusion. The numbers floating in the air before them made no sense at all. They had checked the data 3 times already, running different analysis programs each time. Every single check gave the same impossible result. The Joy Archive was In's life work. For 300 years, they had collected recordings of laughter and celebration from every species in the galactic community. 10,000 different species had contributed to the archive. Some had sent millions of recordings. Others had sent only a few precious samples, but every contribution was carefully cataloged and preserved. In's species, the harmonious collective, did not experience emotions the way most species did. Their crystalline bodies processed information through light and vibration. They could understand joy by studying it, measuring it, and comparing it across different cultures. This made them perfect archivists. They had no bias, no preference for one type of happiness over another. The archive served an important purpose in galactic society. When species first made contact with each other, they often struggled to understand each other's emotions. Fear could look like aggression. Contentment could look like boredom. But joy was something most species could recognize, even if it sounded different. The archive helped new species learn how others expressed happiness. It built bridges between cultures. The problem was the humans. In pulled up the species contribution chart again. The eye, an ancient species that had spread across hundreds of worlds over millions of years, had contributed 8% of all recordings. A warrior culture that celebrated every victory with massive festivals had contributed 6%. The musical E had contributed 5%. These numbers made sense. These were large, old civilizations with billions or trillions of individuals. But humans had contributed 34%. 34% of the entire Joy Archive came from a species that had only joined the galactic community 200 years ago. A species that numbered in the billions, not trillions. A species that controlled only one star system and a handful of colony worlds. It was impossible. The numbers were wrong. They had to be wrong. In decided to investigate the human submissions directly. They pulled up the first recording in the database. The file was labeled Family Dinner Household Earth 2187. The recording began and heard multiple human voices talking over each other. Then one voice said something about a chicken crossing a road. Several humans made sounds that the database identified as laughter. The laughter lasted approximately 4 seconds. The recording ended. In played another recording. This one was labeled Office Meeting Tokyo Branch 2195. A human was giving a presentation about quarterly profits. The human made an error with the display screen. All the humans in the room laughed. The recording lasted 6 seconds. Another recording. Wedding Reception Mumbai 2203. Humans laughing as 2 individuals danced. 8 seconds. Another. Grocery Store New Seattle Colony 2210. A human child said something incorrectly. Adults laughed. 3 seconds. In played recording after recording. Humans laughing at sporting events. Humans laughing at entertainment programs. Humans laughing while working. Humans laughing while eating. Humans laughing alone in their homes while looking at their communication devices. After reviewing 50 recordings, I noticed something strange. Humans did not only laugh during celebrations or achievements. They laughed at mistakes. They laughed when objects fell. They laughed at unexpected sounds. They laughed when they were surprised. One recording even showed a human laughing after experiencing a minor injury. In cross-reference this with other species in the archive. The eye laughed during religious ceremonies and successful hunts. The laughed after winning battles or competitions. The E laughed during musical performances and mating rituals. Every species had clear, logical triggers for their expressions of joy. Humans seemed to laugh at everything. And spent the next several days reviewing human submissions. They discovered that humans had terms for different types of laughter. There was genuine laughter and polite laughter. There was nervous laughter that occurred during stress. There was hysterical laughter that happened during extreme emotional states. There was even something called laughing at yourself, which meant finding humor in one's own failures. The more in studied, the more confused they became. Other species used laughter to reinforce social bonds during positive events. This made evolutionary sense. Joy brought groups together during good times, strengthening the community. But humans used laughter for everything. They laughed to ease tension. They laughed to show friendship. They laughed to dismiss concerns. They laughed when uncomfortable. They laughed when sad. They even had phrases like laugh or cry and laughing through the pain. And found one recording that troubled them deeply. It was labeled Hospital Waiting Room Earth 2198. A group of humans sat together, clearly distressed. The database notes indicated they were waiting for news about a sick family member. One human said something. The others laughed, but the sound was different from other laughter recordings. It was quieter, sadder, but still recognizable as laughter. This made no sense. Why would humans express joy during sadness? And reviewed the metadata for all human submissions. They discovered that humans submitted recordings at a rate 50 times higher than any other species. A typical human would record and submit laughter multiple times per day. Some humans submitted hundreds of recordings per year. The archive had a public submission system. Anyone could upload recordings of laughter, as long as they were genuine expressions of joy from real situations. Most species treated this seriously. They submitted recordings of important celebrations, special occasions, and meaningful moments. Humans submitted everything. They recorded themselves laughing at entertainment. They recorded their children laughing at simple games. They recorded friends laughing together. They recorded strangers laughing at public events. Some humans even had devices that automatically captured and submitted laughter recordings whenever their voice analysis software detected the sound. And pulled up the human submission guidelines. Every species had been given the same instructions. Submit genuine expressions of joy that represent your culture. And had written those instructions themselves 300 years ago. The humans were following the guidelines perfectly. Every submission was genuine. Every recording showed real laughter. The humans were not cheating or flooding the system with fake data. They simply laughed more than anyone else. And checked the average laughter frequency across species. The I laughed approximately once per week. The laughed once per day. The E laughed several times per day during their active seasons. Humans laughed an average of 15 times per day. 15 times per day, every day, for their entire lives. In's crystalline body flickered with the light patterns that indicated deep thought. This was not a database error. This was not a mistake. This was real. Humans laughed constantly. They laughed at things that would not make other species feel any emotion at all. They laughed in situations where other species would remain silent or express different emotions. They had built laughter into every part of their social structure, their entertainment, their communication, and their daily lives. It needed answers. They needed to understand why humans were so different. This was not just a statistical anomaly. This was something fundamental about human psychology and culture. They composed a formal message to the Human Liaison Office. The message was simple and direct. The Joy Archive requires consultation regarding human laughter patterns. Please send an expert on human emotional expression and psychology. This matter is urgent and unusual. And sent the message and waited. While they waited, they continued reviewing recordings. They watched humans laughing in every possible situation. They saw humans of all ages from all their different cultures and colony worlds. Despite their diversity, they all shared this same trait. They all laughed constantly. 3 weeks later, received a response. A human expert was coming to the archive. Her name was Dr. Sarah, and she specialized in human behavior and emotional expression. In prepared a presentation showing all their findings. They compiled statistics, charts, and sample recordings. They wanted Doctor to explain this mystery. They wanted to understand why humans had filled the Joy archive with more laughter than all other species combined. But as In worked on their presentation, something unexpected happened. They played one recording again, a simple video of two human children laughing together while playing a game. The laughter was loud and wild and seemed to feed on itself, each child laughing harder because the other was laughing. For the first time in 300 years of studying Joy, Archivist In felt something like curiosity mixed with appreciation. The sound was infectious, even to a crystalline being who did not experience emotions the same way. There was something in that pure, unrestrained laughter that transcended species and biology. Perhaps, In thought, the humans were not overrepresented in the Joy archive at all. Perhaps they were simply showing the galaxy something it had forgotten how to do properly. Part 2. Dr. Sarah arrived at the Joy archive on a transport ship from Earth. In met her at the docking port. The human was smaller than expected, with dark hair pulled back from her face and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Archivist In. Sarah extended her hand in the human greeting gesture. In had prepared for this and extended one of their crystalline limbs to gently touch her palm. Doctor, thank you for coming. The situation is quite unusual. Sarah smiled. I read your message. Honestly, I'm surprised it took this long for someone to notice. In led her into the archive's main chamber. The space was vast, with holographic displays floating throughout the room showing waveforms and spectral analyses of different laughter patterns. Sarah's eyes went wide as she looked around. This is incredible, she said. How many recordings do you have here? Approximately 47 billion, In replied. From 10,000 species across the known galaxy, and 16 billion of those recordings are from humans. Sarah stopped walking. She looked at In, then at the displays, then back at In. Then she did something that In had seen in thousands of recordings but never experienced directly in person. She laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber. It was bright and genuine and lasted approximately 8 seconds. When she finished, Sarah wiped her eyes and shook her head. I'm sorry, she said, still smiling. It's just, of course we are. Of course humans would fill your archive, that's so perfectly human. In's body flickered with confusion. You find this situation humorous. I find it deeply puzzling. I know, Sarah said. That's what makes it funny. Look, can you show me what you found? I promise I'll explain everything. Over the next several hours, In presented all their research. They showed Sarah the statistics, the frequency charts, the comparative analyses. They played sample recordings from dozens of human submissions. They explained how every other species had clear, logical patterns for when and why they laughed. Sarah listened carefully, occasionally nodding or making notes on her data pad. When In finished, she was quiet for a moment. Okay, she said finally. I see the problem. You're trying to understand human laughter using the same framework you use for other species, but human laughter doesn't work that way. Please explain, In said. Sarah stood and walked to one of the displays. For most species, laughter is about joy, right? It's a signal that something good has happened. A successful hunt, a victory, a celebration. It reinforces positive experiences. Correct, In confirmed. Humans laugh at those things too, Sarah continued. But we also laugh at everything else. We laugh when we're nervous because it helps us manage anxiety. We laugh when we make mistakes because it helps us accept failure. We laugh at tragedy because sometimes it's the only way to process horror. We laugh at absurdity because recognizing something is ridiculous means we're still looking for meaning in the world. She pulled up one of the recordings and had flagged as unusual. It showed a human in a kitchen dropping a container of food. The food spilled everywhere. The human looked at the mess, then started laughing. "See this?" Sarah said. "This person just lost their dinner. They probably have to clean that up, but they're laughing. Why? Because the alternative is getting angry or upset, and that won't help. The laughter releases the tension. It's a way of telling yourself that this small disaster doesn't matter in the big picture." Process this information. So human laughter is not just an expression of joy. It is a tool for emotional regulation. "Exactly," Sarah said. "It's a Swiss Army knife of emotions. We use it for everything." Over the next few days, Sarah gave a comprehensive education in human humor. She explained jokes, which were verbal constructions designed specifically to trigger laughter. She showed examples of physical comedy, where humans did clumsy or unexpected things to make others laugh. She introduced the concept of satire, where humans used humor to criticize society and power structures. She explained puns, which were plays on words that most species found confusing but humans found delightful. She showed videos of something called stand-up comedy, where a single human would stand on a stage and talk for extended periods with the sole purpose of making others laugh. "This is a profession," asked. "Humans pay other humans just to make them laugh." "It's a huge industry," Sarah confirmed. "Comedy shows, funny videos, humorous writing, entertainment programs. Humans will spend money and time specifically seeking out things that make them laugh." Found this fascinating. Other species had entertainers, but their entertainment was usually beautiful music, impressive displays of skill, or profound storytelling. The idea of entertainment designed only to trigger laughter seemed uniquely human. Sarah showed in something called memes. These were images or videos with text that humans shared through their communication networks. Most memes were designed to be humorous. They referenced shared cultural experiences or pointed out absurd aspects of daily life. "Memes are interesting," Sarah explained, "because they create in-jokes across millions of people. A human on Earth can share a meme with a human on a colony world, and they'll both laugh because they both understand the reference. It builds community through shared humor." She showed in a meme about a cat looking confused and did not understand why this was funny. Sarah laughed at In's confusion, which made In even more confused. "Sorry," Sarah said. "That's another thing. Humans often laugh at confusion itself. We find it funny when someone doesn't get a joke, or when expectations are subverted, or when things are just weird. Humans laugh at disorder and unexpected events," In observed. "Most species find such things distressing." "We find them distressing too," Sarah said. "But we laugh anyway, maybe because we laugh actually." Sarah showed in videos of human children. Children laughed even more frequently than adults, sometimes hundreds of times per day. They laughed at simple games, at funny faces, at new words, at animals, at their own reflections. "Children are still learning about the world," Sarah explained. "Everything is new and surprises make us laugh. As we get older, we laugh less because we've seen more. But humans try to hold onto that childlike ability to find joy in simple things." One recording particularly interested In. It showed a human telling a story at what appeared to be a funeral ceremony. The humans present were clearly sad, some crying, but the speaker told funny stories about the deceased person, and the sad humans began laughing through their tears. "This is most confusing," In said. "They are mourning, yet they laugh." Sarah's expression grew serious. "That's one of the most important uses of laughter. When we lose someone, we hurt, but we also want to remember the good times. By sharing funny memories, we celebrate the person's life instead of only mourning their death. The laughter doesn't mean we're not sad. It means we're choosing to remember joy alongside sorrow." In began to understand. Human laughter was not simple. It was layered with meaning and purpose. It served social functions, psychological functions, and even philosophical functions. Sarah showed examples of gallows humor, where humans in terrible situations made jokes about their circumstances. She showed recordings from human history, from wars and disasters and diseases, where humans had used humor to maintain hope. When things are at their worst, Sarah said, humans make jokes. It's defiance. It's a way of saying that no matter how bad things get, we're still here and we're still human, and we still get to decide how we react. She showed in a recording from Earth's history, from a period called World War II. Human soldiers were trapped in a difficult battle. One soldier made a joke about their situation. Others laughed. They were scared and cold and in danger, but they laughed. That laughter, Sarah said quietly, probably helped them survive. It reminded them they were still alive, still together, still human. And spent days absorbing all this information. They watched recordings with new understanding. A human laughing at a dropped object was not just expressing emotion. They were choosing to see the event as minor rather than catastrophic. A human laughing with friends was not just sharing joy. They were strengthening bonds that might help them through future difficulties. A human laughing alone was not just happy. They were practicing a skill that kept them psychologically healthy. I believe I am beginning to understand, In said. Human laughter is adaptive behavior. It helps your species survive and thrive in difficult circumstances. That's part of it, Sarah agreed. But it's more than survival. Laughter is how we connect with each other. It's how we process a universe that's often confusing and scary. It's how we find meaning in absurdity. And it's how we remind ourselves that being alive can be joyful, even when everything else says it shouldn't be. She pulled up a recording that had become In's favorite. It showed a human mother and her young child. They were sitting together and something had made them laugh. The laughter built on itself. Each time one started to stop, the other would laugh harder, which would set them both off again. They laughed for 3 full minutes, tears streaming down their faces, gasping for breath, unable to stop. What caused this laughter? In asked. Sarah checked the file notes. According to the notes, the child mispronounced a word. That's all. But it triggered this feedback loop of contagious laughter. Contagious laughter. Humans laugh more when other humans are laughing, Sarah explained. We feed off each other's joy. That's why comedy shows have audiences, why people share funny videos, why we like laughing together. It's social. It's contagious. One person's joy spreads to others. In watched the mother and child laughing together. There was something beautiful in it, something pure. They were not laughing at anything important. They were just laughing together, creating joy out of nothing. This, In said slowly, is why humans have filled the archive. You do not wait for appropriate moments to express joy. You create joy deliberately and share it constantly. Yes, Sarah said simply, we do. Part 3. Sarah's research visit was supposed to last 1 week. She ended up staying for 2 months. During that time, word spread through the galactic community about the human laughter phenomenon. Scientists from other species requested permission to visit the archive and review the findings. The first to arrive were their species had lost their 3,000 years ago when their sun went supernova. They had survived as a spacefaring people, but their culture had become somber and serious. They built memorials everywhere they went. They preserved the memory of their lost world through quiet contemplation and historical records. 3 researchers came to the archive. Their names were difficult for humans to pronounce, so Sarah called them by their titles: scholar, observer, and keeper. They moved slowly and spoke in whispers. Their skin had patterns that shifted to show their emotions, but the patterns were always muted In and Sarah showed them the human recordings, the watched in silence. When the presentation ended, Scholar spoke first. We have no laughter in our archives, Scholar said. Not for 3,000 years. We believed we had such things. We believed grief was the proper response to loss. Sarah looked at Scholar with gentle eyes. Grief is proper, but it doesn't have to be the only response. Would you like to see something? She pulled up recordings from human memorial services. She showed how humans mourned their dead by sharing funny stories and joyful memories. She showed how human cultures around the world had different traditions, but many included laughter alongside tears. Observers' patterns flickered slightly. It was the first color it had seen on any of them. But how? How do you laugh when you have lost something precious? Because, Sarah said gently, the person we lost would want us to remember the joy they brought us. Because laughing at a memory doesn't mean we miss them less. It means we're grateful we knew them at all. They were quiet for a long time. Then Keeper spoke. Our archives preserve our lost world in images and documents and historical records, but we have no recordings of joy. We have forgotten what our people sounded like when they were happy. Sarah thought for a moment. Can I ask you something? What was your world like? What did your people do for fun? Keeper's patterns flickered through several colors, settling on something that might have been surprise. Fun. Yes, before the disaster. What brought your people joy? The three looked at each other. Slowly, hesitantly, they began to share memories. Not their own memories, but stories passed down through generations. They told Sarah and in about festivals and games. They told about children playing in bioluminescent forests. They told about music and art and celebration. As they talked, their patterns grew brighter. Scholar told a story about a historical figure who had accidentally disrupted an important ceremony by falling into a decorative pool. Observer added details, and the way they told it made it sound humorous. Keeper made a sound that might have been their species' equivalent of laughter. Sarah smiled. There it is, that memory is still there, you haven't lost everything. Before they left, they made a request. They wanted to create a new section in their archives dedicated to joy. They wanted to remember their people as they had been in life, not just in death. Sarah offered to help them, and they accepted gratefully. Next came They were a warrior species, large and powerful, with thick armor-like skin and deep voices. 3 warriors arrived at the archive with a problem. We laugh only in victory, the lead warrior explained. His name was, and he carried battle scars across his body. But many warriors struggle when battles end. They know only war. When there is peace, they know only silence. Sarah listened carefully. Are you talking about what humans call post-traumatic stress? His expression was uncertain. Our warriors returned from battle changed. They do not laugh anymore. They do not celebrate victories. They only remember losses. Sarah spent days talking with the warriors. She showed them how human soldiers used humor to process trauma. She introduced them to the concept of therapy and support groups where warriors could share their experiences without judgment. She showed them how laughter could be a tool for healing, not just celebration. In human culture, Sarah explained, we have something called dark humor. When people have experienced terrible things, they sometimes joke about those experiences. It sounds disrespectful, but it's actually a way of taking power back from the trauma. It's a way of saying, this happened to me, but it doesn't own me. Listened intently, you make weapons of laughter. In a way, yes, we use humor as a weapon against despair. The left with new ideas for supporting their warriors. They began developing programs based on human models, adapting them to their own culture. Before he departed, thanked Sarah and did something unexpected. He told a joke. It was not a very good joke, and the delivery was rough, but his fellow warriors laughed. It was the first time In had heard laughter that was not connected to battle. More species came. The E wanted to understand how humans used humor in music. The I were curious about religious humor. The crystalline harmonious wanted to know if their own species could learn to appreciate humor despite their different emotional processing. Sarah worked with all of them. She became an unofficial ambassador for human humor, explaining and demonstrating and teaching. In watched her work and marveled at her patience and insight. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings, In found Sarah sitting alone in the archive, watching recordings. "Are you well?" In asked. Sarah smiled. "Just thinking. When you first called me here, I thought this was just an interesting research project. But it's bigger than that, isn't it?" "How so?" "All these species are coming here to learn about laughter, but they're really learning about resilience, about finding joy even when the universe gives you every reason to despair. That's what human laughter really is. It's stubborn hope." In's body pulsed with soft light. "I have learned much from you, Doctor. I understand now that the archive is not just a collection of sounds. It is a collection of survival strategies." "And humans," Sarah said quietly, "have been surviving with humor for as long as we've existed. We've faced disasters, diseases, wars, extinctions. And through it all, we kept laughing. Not because things were okay, but because we refused to let them be only terrible." The Galactic Symposium on Emotional Expression was held 6 months after Sarah's arrival. It was one of the largest gatherings of different species in recent history. Hundreds of researchers, cultural experts, and government representatives attended. In presented their findings on human laughter. They showed all the data they had collected, explained all the research Sarah had helped them understand, and demonstrated the different types and functions of human humor. The presentation took 3 hours and showed compilation, videos of humans laughing in every possible situation. They showed statistical analyses proving that human laughter frequency was genuinely exceptional. They showed interviews with humans explaining why they laughed. They showed examples of how other species were beginning to incorporate humor into their own cultures after studying human examples. At the end of the presentation, In's conclusion was simple. Humans have not overcontributed to the joy archive. They have simply demonstrated something the rest of the galaxy had forgotten or never fully understood. Joy is not just a response to good things. Joy is a choice. It is a skill. It is a tool. And humans have mastered it in a way no other known species has. The chamber was silent when In finished. Then, from the human section of the audience, someone started clapping. It was an old human tradition to show appreciation through rhythmic hand percussion. Other humans joined in. The sound echoed through the chamber. Then something unprecedented happened. Other species began to imitate the gesture. The eye clicked their claws in rhythm. The drummed their fists against their chests. The E made harmonious sounds. Even some of the pulsed their patterns in time with the clapping. It was not laughter, but it was celebration. It was acknowledgement. It was connection. After the symposium, the Joy Archive experienced a massive surge in submissions. Other species began recording and submitting their own expressions of joy more frequently. But more importantly, they began to experiment with humor. They began to laugh at things that would have previously seemed inappropriate or illogical. They created a memorial celebration day where they shared happy memories instead of only grieving. They developed warrior comedy programs where veterans used humor to process their experiences. The E composed songs that were funny instead of only beautiful. A religious leader told a joke during a ceremony, and the congregation laughed instead of being scandalized. In continued their work at the archive, but now with a deeper understanding. They created new categories for different types of joy. They developed better analysis tools that could identify the context and function of laughter, not just its sound. They hired assistants from multiple species to help process the increasing number of submissions. Sarah returned to Earth but remained a consultant for the archive. She video called in regularly to discuss new findings and developments. During one call, she shared news that made In's crystalline body glow with pleasure. "I got a message from Scholar," Sarah said. They found some old recordings from before their world was destroyed. Recordings of children laughing at a festival. They've been playing it in their memorial spaces. Scholar says it helps them remember that their people were alive, not just that they died. That is wonderful, In said. They also said something else. They said that for 3,000 years they've been teaching their children only about loss, but now they're teaching them about joy too. They're teaching them to laugh again. In thought about this, because of human laughter recordings. Because of what those recordings represent, Sarah corrected. The recordings were just the catalyst. What really changed things was understanding that joy is a choice, not just a reaction. A year after the symposium, the Joy Archive held a special celebration. They created a new permanent exhibit dedicated to human laughter. The exhibit included interactive displays where visitors could learn about different types of humor, try making jokes themselves, and practice laughing. The centerpiece of the exhibit was In's favorite recording, the one showing the human mother and child laughing together for 3 minutes straight. Visitors could sit and watch the video on a loop. Many did. In often stood near that exhibit, observing visitors from different species. They watched as serious eye scholars smiled while viewing the video. They watched as warriors stood silently, their body language softening. They watched as families sat together, their patterns flickering with colors that hadn't been seen in. One day, a young child watched the video of the laughing mother and child. The child's patterns flickered through several colors, settling on bright yellow. Then the child made a sound. It was quiet and unfamiliar, but In recognized it immediately. The child was laughing. The child's parents looked shocked. They had never heard their child laugh before. No of that generation had laughed. The sound was different from human laughter, more musical and less harsh, but it was unmistakably joy. Other visitors stopped to watch. The child kept laughing, looking at their parents with bright patterns, and slowly, hesitantly, the parents' patterns began to shift too. They were not laughing, not yet, but they were happy. They were experiencing joy at their child's joy. In recorded the moment for the archive. This was important. This was a species reclaiming something they had lost. This was joy spreading across the galaxy, transmitted through nothing more than the simple act of one species showing another how to laugh. That evening, In prepared their daily report. They wrote about the child, about the growing number of submissions from other species, about the cultural changes they were observing. At the end of the report, they added a personal note, something they had never done before in 300 years of archival work. Humans are teaching the galaxy to laugh, In wrote. But more than that, they are teaching us that joy is not weakness. Joy is not frivolity. Joy is not inappropriate during difficult times. Joy is resistance. Joy is resilience. Joy is a fundamental statement that life matters, that we matter, and that we refuse to let darkness have the final word. The humans filled the Joy Archive not because they are happier than other species, but because they understand something profound. That choosing joy, especially when circumstances do not warrant it, is one of the most courageous acts a sentient being can perform. In saved the report and stood alone in the archive, surrounded by billions of recordings of laughter from across the galaxy. The humans had given the galaxy an unexpected gift. They had not shared advanced technology or military strategy or resource management techniques. They had shared laughter, and in doing so they had reminded everyone else that surviving was not enough. Thriving required joy. And joy, the humans had proven, was something you could choose, cultivate, and share, regardless of circumstances. In the quiet of the archive, In played the recording of the mother and child one more time. They listened to the pure, unrestrained laughter and felt something they had never felt before. Not joy exactly. Their species did not process emotions that way, but something close, something like appreciation for the beautiful complexity of sentient life, something like gratitude for the humans and their stubborn, persistent, contagious joy. The laughter echoed through the chamber, and In understood completely now. The humans had not just filled the archive with recordings. They had filled it with hope, and hope, like laughter, was something the galaxy desperately needed.